strangers in the storm. Jim staggered through sheets of merciless rain. His jacket hung heavy and soaked, jeans clinging uncomfortably to his skin with every step. He'd underestimated the power of the storm, the way this strange planet could shift from calm skies to torrents in mere moments. Lightning cracked violently, illuminating the landscape in jagged flashes that sent eerie shadows crawling along the rocky terrain. His fingers brushed against the reassuring bulk of his fire starter, hanging securely at his side, one of the few things he'd managed to keep dry. It had been his most trusted companion through countless storms, an instrument of survival in a harsh, unforgiving wilderness. He often found himself exploring alone. Ahead, a dark silhouette emerged, an outcrop, jutting defiantly from the muddy earth like a natural fortress. It promised at least temporary refuge from the storm's fury. Jim gritted his teeth against the icy needles of rain pelting his face, forcing himself forward. His boots squelched loudly, mud seeping in around his ankles, each step harder than the last. The storm howled, threatening to steal the last of his strength. Stumbling into the overhang's protection, Jim exhaled raggedly. The sudden absence of rain was a profound relief. Blinking water from his eyes, he turned to survey his newfound shelter, and froze. Standing against the far wall was a creature of striking presence, a beast woman. She was tall, powerfully built, with fur the rich blazing red of autumn leaves and eyes like sharp yellow gems. Her posture was defensive, muscles taut beneath thick fur, watching Jim warily from across the cave. His breath hitched, heart quickening with instinctive caution. Humans rarely encountered beast people without conflict. He knew just enough of their kind to understand their fierce pride and warrior traditions. Neither moved for a long moment. The only sound was the persistent drip of rainwater from Jim's sodden clothes, pooling at his feet. The beast woman, Gloria, he'd later learn, eyed him carefully, nodding at every twitch and movement he made. Jim understood her suspicion, it mirrored his own uncertainty. Yet as lightning crashed again, illuminating the alien terrain, they silently acknowledged the necessity of an uneasy truce. Jim slowly raised his hands, palms out, signaling peaceful intentions. Gloria's sharp eyes flicked from his hands to his fire starter, calculating the threat he posed. Finally, she gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod, allowing Jim to move further beneath the protective stone. He dropped heavily onto a relatively dry patch of ground, fatigue making him clumsy as he fumbled with numb fingers. The chill had begun to seep deep into his bones. Without hesitation, Jim pulled out the fire starter, carefully shielding it from lingering moisture, and set about building a small blaze from the bits of kindling he'd managed to stash away. Gloria watched him intently, curious yet guarded. He could feel her attention, the intensity of her gaze following his every movement. She had reason to be wary. Humans were unpredictable creatures, quick to exploit and destroy. But Jim had no desire to harm her. Survival required cooperation, and the harsh world beyond their shelter had stripped him of petty prejudices long ago. The first sparks caught, blossoming into vibrant flames that danced gently, pushing back the cave's shadows. Warmth radiated outward, easing the chill in Jim's exhausted body and soothing his trembling muscles. For a brief moment, he simply stared into the fire, grateful for the fragile security it provided. Then, slowly, cautiously, he glanced toward Gloria, offering a small nod of invitation. She hesitated, her ears flicking in thought, her tail swishing restlessly behind her. It was a risk for her, a gesture of vulnerability. But the raw need for warmth and comfort was universal, transcending differences and past hostilities. At last, Gloria moved forward, each step cautious yet proud, betraying nothing of any pain or discomfort she might feel. As she settled near the fire, her posture slowly relaxed, shoulders easing, for drying under the fire's welcome heat. They sat quietly, neither speaking, each assessing the other through stolen glances and careful observation. Jim studied the fine lines of her musculature, strength balanced by grace. Gloria discreetly eyed his fire starter and weathered clothing, clearly assessing his competence. The silence grew comfortable rather than oppressive. The mutual caution began shifting gradually into mutual respect. Eventually, Jim reached into his small satchel, pulling out a ration bar. Breaking it carefully in half, he held out the larger piece toward Gloria. Her eyes widened slightly at the unexpected gesture. With a guarded expression, she accepted it. Her clawed hand was careful and precise as their fingers briefly touched. In that fleeting contact, Jim sensed more than simple acknowledgement. There was curiosity, perhaps even the faintest hint of approval. They ate quietly, each absorbed in thought. As warmth spread through their weary bodies, the barrier of suspicion diminished further. The raging storm continued unabated outside, but beneath their rocky sanctuary, something fragile and new was forming. A tentative trust born from shared hardship. Gloria finally broke their silence, her voice low, resonant, and surprisingly gentle. "Your fire is strong," she murmured, the words carrying deeper meaning beyond simple observation. Jim smiled faintly, appreciating the subtle compliment. "Your shelter saved my life," he replied honestly, meeting her sharp yellow eyes directly. "Seems like a fair trade." Gloria studied him, searching his face for deceit, and finding none. The weary defensiveness slowly melted from her features, replaced by an emerging warmth of her own. She inclined her head, acknowledging their newfound alliance. As lightning flickered once more on the distant horizon, they both knew the storm was far from over. But now, neither faced it alone. "I gave her warmth, she let me into her world." Sci-Fi HFY love story. As twilight deepened outside the den, a pale violet dusk settled over the valley, casting elongated shadows across the rocky floor. Jim and Gloria sat near the fire, its amber light illuminating the space with a quiet steadiness. Neither had spoken much after the second meal. Exhaustion clung to them both, not just physical but the deeper kind, the kind carried in old wounds, buried memories, and too many nights spent alone. Gloria leaned against the stone wall, eyes half-lidded but alert. She hadn't slept deeply yet, that much was clear. Trust might have sparked between them, but it hadn't yet taken full root. Jim understood. He'd slept with a blade beneath his pillow enough times to recognize someone doing the same in their heart. Jim finally broke the silence, his voice low, roughened by smoke and fatigue. "How long since you've seen another of your kind?" Her ears flicked, not in irritation but surprise. She hesitated before answering. "Too long." He waited, not pushing, letting the pause stretch until she chose to fill it. "I was part of a hunting pride," she said slowly. "Years ago. Before everything changed." He didn't ask what changed. The way her voice thinned at the edge of that word told him enough. Exile, perhaps. Or betrayal. Maybe both. Beastfolk lived in tightly bound groups where honor and challenge were law. Stepping outside that structure often meant you never stepped back in. "They ever come this way?" She shook her head. "The paths here are old. Abandoned. No one tracks this range anymore. They think it cursed." "And is it?" Her lip curled, showing the faintest trace of fong. "Only if you're weak." Jim gave a quiet chuckle. Not mocking. Appreciative. "Then lucky for me you're not." She tilted her head slightly, one ear twitching. Her gaze lingered on him a second longer than it had the night before. Night deepened. Gloria eventually slept, though lightly. Jim stayed awake a while longer, tending the fire, thinking of nothing and everything. Her presence had shifted something inside him, a subtle stirring where emptiness used to live. He didn't name it. Not yet. By dawn, the storm was gone. A crisp chill lingered in the air, but the world felt washed clean. Gloria rose before the sun breached the horizon. She moved with practiced silence, stretching, testing the bandaged leg. Jim noticed it still caused her pain, but she didn't mention it. Instead, she eyed the eastern sky and muttered, "We should move." "Where to?" "There's a hot spring not far from here. Deep in a split ravine. Steam vents keep it hidden. Warm, safe. Food nearby. Good place to rest longer." He nodded, already packing. "Lead the way." The trek was longer than he'd expected. The terrain was steep, carved from volcanic activity and time, riddled with jagged edges and unstable footing. Gloria moved slower than usual, the wound making her cautious, but she didn't complain. Jim stayed close, not crowding her but near enough to help if she stumbled. By midday, the scent of sulfur grew stronger. Soon the ravine opened into a narrow cleft of earth, steam rising in thick curls. The spring lay ahead, crystalline and impossibly blue, its surface rippling from heat. "You weren't kidding," Jim murmured, marveling. Gloria stepped toward the edge, unfastening the remnants of her leather arm wrap. "Not much does better for wounds or cold." She paused, eyes flicking to him. You gonna keep staring or get in? He blinked, then laughed. Right. They bathed separately at first, mutual modesty, cautious distance, but the spring was large enough for that. The water eased aches Jim hadn't even known he had. The heat seeped into muscle, bone, and thought. Across the steam, he glimpsed Gloria, half submerged, eyes closed, her fur slicked back, features softened in the haze. She looked less like a predator, more like someone still healing. They stayed there a long time. The silence between them had changed again, not strained, but full. Like the pause between heartbeats. That night, they made camp beside the spring. Jim shared a story, one from before he'd left the colonies. A mistake that cost lives, a mission gone wrong because he trusted the wrong person. He spoke in fragments, but Gloria listened. You ever regret leaving them? Sometimes, he admitted. But not enough to go back. She nodded, understanding more than she said. When he finally lay down, the fire casting soft flickers along the rock, he felt her presence beside him, not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel. He didn't reach for her. Didn't need to. For now, that quiet proximity was enough. But he could feel it, something shifting in her too. A door not opened, but maybe, unlocked. The night passed uneventfully, but something in the way she looked at him come morning told Jim that whatever they were building between them, it wasn't just survival anymore. It was the beginning of something that could reshape them both. And he wasn't afraid. The days after their visit to the hot spring followed a rhythm. Morning hikes through narrow passes, afternoons scavenging for food, berries, roots, small prey, and evenings spent around a fire that no longer felt like just survival. It had become something more, a gathering place for two wounded souls slowly circling the edges of trust. Jim learned that Gloria loved to track the sky. Not the stars, those she dismissed with a shrug, but the clouds. The shapes they took, the stories she made from them. One afternoon, they lay on a moss-covered outcrop high above the valley, the sun baking their faces. That one, she said, pointing with a clawed finger, looks like a scur beast. See the horn? Jim squinted. Looks more like a messed-up kettle to me. She snorted, a low, amused sound. Your imagination is stunted. He turned to her, brow raised. Or maybe yours runs wild because you spend your time hiding in caves. She growled, but it was playful. That playfulness was new. A thread woven into the days that hadn't been there before. Gloria began to tease more, challenge more. Jim matched her wit for wit, and through those small verbal battles, something deeper took root. They sparred one evening, not with real weapons, but with sticks and old reflexes. Gloria moved like water, despite her injury. Jim was solid, unflashy but experienced. The bout ended with him pinned beneath her, stick at his throat. Dead again, she said smugly. You cheat. You hesitate. He smiled. Only when I like the view. She blinked. Something in her eyes shifted, not recoiling, not defensive. Just still. As if she'd never had someone say it like that before. Not as a threat. Not as a transaction. That night, she sat closer to him. Not touching, but the space between them had shrunk. Just enough to notice. Just enough to make the air crackle. One night, a distant howl fractured the silence. Not animal. Not beast folk. Something stranger. Gloria tensed, ears pricking. We're not alone out here, she murmured. Jim reached for his sidearm. You recognize it? No, but it doesn't belong here. They kept watch in shifts. No attack came. But the sense of being hunted lingered for days after. As a precaution, they moved deeper into the ravine, into a place Gloria called the bones of the world. Massive pillars of stone, shaped by ancient volcanic eruptions, rose like fingers toward the sky. The land here was quieter, more primal. Jim asked why she'd never gone farther into it. Didn't want to go alone, she said. You're not alone now. She met his gaze. Her eyes didn't dart away this time. No, I'm not. Later that evening, as the fire danced low, Jim reached into his bag and pulled out a small object. A locket. Scratched, dented, old. Someone important, Gloria asked. He nodded. My sister. She died in a mining collapse. This was hers. You carry the memory well. He looked at her, surprised by the gentleness in her tone. You ever carry something from before? She hesitated, then pulled a cord from beneath her fur. A thong hung on it, long and wicked. From the one who challenged me for the right to lead. I won. But they exiled me anyway. Said I was too human in the way I showed mercy. He touched the thong gently. Then they were fools. The next morning, he found her curled beside him, arm grazing his. Not clinging. Not asking. Just near. Like a statement. And Jim knew then, she wasn't just letting him into her world. She was building one with him in it. The days that followed passed in a rhythm that surprised them both. Morning light would seep over the ridge, soft and golden, catching steam in beams that looked almost holy. Jim and Gloria rose early each day, the warmth of the springs their shared reprieve, the surrounding cliffs their silent watchers. Gloria hunted when she could, careful not to overstrain her healing leg. Jim foraged and improved their makeshift camp, reinforcing the windbreak with scavenged stone, crafting crude snares to supplement their food stores. The silence between them, once edged with tension, grew companionable. One morning, Jim found her by the edge of the spring, crouched low with her hands buried in the earth. He thought at first she was injured again, but when he neared, he saw the gentle reverence in her touch. You're planting. She looked up. I used to gather these roots with my sister. They regrow quickly here. The soil's good. I thought, why not? He said nothing, but a strange warmth spread through his chest. Roots. Family. Memory. She hadn't spoken of anyone she cared about before. Tell me about her, he asked quietly. Gloria hesitated, then slowly sat back. Her name was Elira. Younger than me. Quick. Bright. She made everyone laugh. Even the elders. Her voice softened, the edge of her usual guardedness melting. She died during a raid. I wasn't there to stop it. Jim sat beside her, the morning dew still clinging to the rocks. He didn't try to offer sympathy. Just listened. After that, I left the pride. Couldn't stay. Not with the looks they gave me. Like I should have traded places with her. A silence stretched between them, not empty but full of meaning. You carry that weight like armor, he said finally. But it's not your fault. She didn't answer. But her gaze didn't pull away. That night, as the fire flickered low, Gloria curled closer than before. Her head near his shoulder, though she didn't quite lean on him. He could feel her warmth, the tension in her limbs slowly easing. You humans, she murmured, eyes on the fire. You confuse me. Why's that? You give things without asking. Offer kindness even when it makes you vulnerable. Jim smiled faintly. We just call it hope. She was quiet, and for a moment he thought she'd fallen asleep. But then, almost a whisper, she asked, do you think it's too late for people like us? He looked at her. Really looked. No. I think it's finally time. A week passed. Her leg grew stronger. She began to teach him things, how to read the wind in the trees, how to distinguish the safe moss from the stinging kind. In return, he taught her how to maintain his survival gear, how to patch a wound with field dressings, how to track using terrain markers. They became more than allies. Not lovers, not yet. But something coiled tight between them, a shared breath, a thread that hummed. Then came the drone. It sliced through the sky like a silver blade, a low-pitched hum trailing in its wake. Gloria froze. Jim dove instinctively, pulling her beneath the overhang. Recon, she asked. He nodded grimly. Corporate make. From the spine colonies. That model's recent. They're looking for something. Or someone. Her ears folded back. You. He didn't answer. That night, their camp was quiet. The old comm shattered. Jim sat with his rifle disassembled before him, oiling it with care. Gloria paced. We should run, she said. You know they don't send drones alone. Troops will follow. They'll burn this whole place down if they think it's hiding a defector. I know. Then why are you still here? He looked up at her, expression unreadable. Because you're here. Her breath caught. He stood slowly, approaching. I didn't plan for this. You know that. But I won't run and leave you behind. Her voice dropped, low and trembling. They'll kill you. Then I die knowing I stayed. For the first time, Gloria stepped into his arms. No more guarded distance. No more hesitation. She pressed her forehead against his chest, claws curled against the fabric of his jacket. Then we stay together, she whispered. Outside, the wind shifted. Distant thunder. Not from storms this time, but from ships. The world was about to change again. And this time, neither of them would face it alone. The morning was warm with mist. Steam still curled over the hidden spring as the sun filtered down in golden shafts through the jagged rock walls of the ravine. Jim stirred first. His back ached less. The weariness had retreated from his bones, chased away by rest, heat, and the slow but real comfort of not being alone. Gloria was already awake. She crouched by the water's edge, one hand trailing through the surface, expression unreadable. Her ears flicked when she sensed him rise. Bad dreams? Jim asked, stretching his arms above his head. No, she said softly. Old ones. He joined her. They sat in silence for a while. No need to fill it. The trust between them had deepened into something else now, not yet defined, not yet named, but undeniable. We can't stay here forever, she said finally. Even this place won't go unnoticed if we linger. Jim nodded. Where, then? She looked east. There are old ruins out there. Ancient even before my kind built dens and hunting circles. Some say the first beast folk came from them. Others say the humans did. I've never been. But I think we should go. You trust me that much? He asked. You gave me warmth when I would have died. And you haven't once treated me like a beast. You've earned more than trust. He met her gaze. Then let's go. They traveled light. The journey was longer this time, winding through dead forests and across plains where mist clung to the ground like forgotten ghosts. Gloria walked with a limp still, but stronger now. Her wound was healing well. On the third day, they crested a ridge and saw them, black stone towers half swallowed by earth and vine. The ruins jutted from the hills like bones of a long-dead giant. We're not the first to find this place, Jim murmured. No. But we might be the first to walk it without fear. Inside, the air was cool and dry. Faint energy hummed through the ancient metal veins running beneath the stone. They found carvings, some human, some beast folk, and others, unreadable. Do you feel that? Gloria whispered. Jim did. A resonance. Like memory etched into the walls themselves. That night, they camped in the heart of the ruin. No fire, just starlight and old echoes. Gloria sat close to him, her shoulder brushing his. My people would say this place is sacred, she said. Mine would call it haunted. She smiled. Maybe it's both. Jim watched her. Her silhouette framed by the moonlight. The strength in her voice. The gentleness she'd hidden for so long now showing in flickers. He reached out, slow, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their hands met first. Then foreheads. Then silence, wrapped not in fear or tension, but a quiet, aching need. She spoke against his skin. I never thought I'd let someone in again. Not like this. Me neither. They didn't make promises. The stars didn't ask for vows. But as they lay beneath the bones of old civilizations, wrapped in warmth and memory, Jim knew. Whatever this was between them, it wasn't fragile. It was becoming a future. A beginning. And both of them, scarred, stubborn, survivors, were ready to walk it together. The storm had long passed, but its echoes lingered in the canyon air. The ravine that had once seemed like sanctuary now hummed with uncertainty. Jim and Gloria stood near the spring, their camp reduced to essentials. His rifle was cleaned, reassembled, and resting beside his pack. Her blades, polished and balanced, were strapped across her back. They weren't preparing for a journey anymore. They were preparing for something final. You don't have to come, Gloria said, adjusting the strap on her shoulder. Her voice was quiet, but her eyes, piercing and unreadable, never left his. Jim shook his head. Not walking away now. She studied him, and for a moment he thought she might argue. But she just nodded. In that gesture was something more than agreement. It was trust, finally unguarded. Word had come from the West Ridge 3 days ago, a message from a trader who passed through abandoned settlements and half-buried ruins. A warlord, once a beastfolk chieftain and now something far darker, was pushing his influence outward. Gloria recognized the name. Hearken, she had said then. He was once a brother. Now he was something else. Something worse. He had torn apart the old prides, enslaved his own kind, and allied with human raiders. Gloria hadn't spoken of revenge. Only balance. Justice. And Jim, who had no people of his own anymore, had said only, then we go. The journey west took 2 days. Across shifting canyons and wind-scoured trails, they followed faint paths worn by prey and memory. They didn't speak often. Words felt too thin for what lay ahead. On the morning of the 3rd day, smoke rose in the distance. That's the camp, Gloria said, crouching beside a bluff. Below them, the remnants of an old mining outpost had been fortified. Banners painted with blood and bone symbols flapped in the dry breeze. Jim peered through the scope of his rifle. He counted at least 24 guards, beastfolk and humans both. Slavers. Mercenaries. A few cages near the back, and movement inside them. He's using them like bait, Gloria growled. Her claws flexed. He knows I'd come. Jim lowered the rifle. Then let's not disappoint him. Night fell, and with it, their assault began. Gloria was the first into the perimeter, moving like smoke through the shadows. Jim provided overwatch, precise and lethal. Each shot bought her seconds. Each movement of hers bought him position. The first explosion came from the eastern wall, a trap Gloria set days ago when she'd first scouted this place alone. Panic spread. Chaos followed. Then they moved as one. Gloria descended on the central square like a storm, blades spinning, fangs bared. Jim covered her from the rooftops until ammo ran dry, then he was in it too, rifle turned club, fists and fire. It was not clean. It was not easy. But it was righteous. When it was over, when the dust and ash settled and the cries had gone silent, Harkin stood alone before the ruined outpost hall. Bloodied, snarling, his mane matted with violence. You should have stayed gone, he spat at Gloria. She stepped forward, unflinching. So should you. They clashed. Not like warriors, but like history tearing itself apart. Old wounds reopened. Old scars struck anew. Jim watched, helpless at first, until Gloria staggered, one knee buckling, blood flowing. Then he moved. His blade caught Harkin's side, not deep, but enough to draw his attention. Enough to give Gloria the opening. She didn't hesitate. A clean strike. A final breath. Harkin fell. The silence that followed felt absolute. They buried the fallen who deserved it. Freed the captured. Burned the cages. By the time the sun rose again, the camp was nothing but scorched earth and reclaimed dignity. Gloria sat beside the cliff edge, overlooking the valley. Jim joined her. Neither said anything for a long time. Then she turned, slowly, and pressed something into his hand. A carved token, shaped like a thong entwined with a flame. It means you're of my pride, she said. Jim stared at it. Then at her. She was different now. Not softer, but less alone. So was he. He slid the token into his coat. Then I guess I'm home. She leaned her head against his shoulder. The storm was truly over. And in the quiet that followed, they didn't speak of survival or vengeance or scars. Only of where they'd go next. Together. The end.